Hello, today I'm going to tell you about a shipwreck that took place in the Mediterranean Sea. A massive luxury cruise ship carrying over 4,000 people collided with an underwater rock off the coast of Italy. The impact tore a 50-meter gash into the ship's hull, allowing a huge amount of seawater to flood in. Gradually, the vessel began to tilt. Surprisingly, the passengers were initially told that the ship had only experienced a routine power outage and that there was nothing to worry about. This incident happened exactly 100 years after the infamous Titanic disaster. I'm talking about the Costa Concordia disaster, which occurred in 2012 when the ship ran aground on rocks. In 1998, the film Titanic, directed by James Cameron and starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, became a global sensation and one of the highest-grossing movies of all time, with an estimated revenue of about $2.257 billion. Its release brought even more attention to the historic Titanic sinking of 1912. As times have changed, luxury cruise ships have evolved from mere transportation into ideal vacation spots on the sea. Beyond basic cabins and dining areas, these ships offer a wide range of entertainment options suitable for all ages. This is why sea vacations have grown increasingly popular. Today's story takes place in the Mediterranean, home to many luxury cruise lines, including one of the most famous, Costa Cruises. Costa Cruises, an Italian company, traces its origins back to the Costa family in 1860. In 1997, Carnival Corporation, a renowned American cruise company, acquired 50% of Costa Cruises shares. This new partnership propelled the company to unprecedented success. Within a few years, Costa Cruises built several large, luxurious ships. In 2004, they ordered a brand new luxury cruise ship from Fincantieri Group, a world-famous shipbuilding conglomerate based in Italy. As the fourth largest shipbuilder globally and the top builder of cruise ships, Fincantieri immediately began designing and constructing the new vessel after receiving the order. Named Costa Concordia, the ship was completed 2 years later and entered commercial service. Let's take a look at the ship's structure. The Costa Concordia was 290 meters long, 35.5 meters wide, and 52 meters tall, with a displacement of 114,000 tons. It had a maximum speed of 23 knots per hour, roughly 42.6 kilometers per hour. The total cost to build this marvel was a staggering 450 million euros, equivalent to about 12 trillion dong at current rates. At the time, it was one of the most luxurious cruise ships owned by Costa Cruises. Comparing it to the Titanic of 1912, the Costa Concordia was significantly larger. It featured 1,500 cabins, including 505 with private balconies, plus 58 suites for swimming pools, 5 spas, 5 restaurants, and even a casino, nightclub, and large theater. Essentially, it had everything you could need, like a floating city on the sea. The ship primarily operated in the Western Mediterranean and ran smoothly since its launch in 2006. But 5 years later, an unexpected disaster struck, with many likening it to a modern-day Titanic. So what happened that day? Why did such a colossal ship run aground? Let's rewind to January 13th, 2012. That Friday, the ultra-luxurious Costa Concordia set sail from the port of Civitavecchia, Italy, carrying 4,232 people from over 70 countries. Of those, more than 3,000 were passengers, and over 1,000 were crew members. The ship departed on time, embarking on a 7-day journey around the Western Mediterranean, starting and ending at Civitavecchia. The itinerary included stops at 6 different ports. Since the ship catered mainly to the Italian market, this wasn't its first voyage on this route. After leaving port, the Costa Concordia cruised through the calm Mediterranean waters at 15 knots per hour, its massive hull glowing brilliantly against the night sky. Its next stop was Savona, a port in northwestern Italy. The ship's captain was Francesco Schettino, an Italian born in 1960. He joined Costa Cruises in 2002 and was promoted to captain in 2006, the same year the Costa Concordia was launched. By 2012, the ship had sailed safely for over 5 years under his command. After departing, Francesco, then 52, stepped onto a stage to welcome everyone aboard on behalf of the crew. Following his speech, the ship's dining and entertainment venues opened, and everything ran smoothly as planned. That night, the ship was set to pass between mainland Italy and Giglio Island. Typically, this route was safe because the waters between the two were deeper, reducing the risk of running aground. But that day, something was different. Captain Francesco ordered a change to the route. Due to a miscalculation, the ship's turning radius was too wide, shifting the actual path westward, dangerously close to the shore, almost heading straight north along Giglio Island. At 9:45 p.m., as the ship neared Giglio Island, its left side struck an underwater reef. The collision seemed minor at first, but the damage to the hull was catastrophic. Passengers immediately felt the ship shake and sway. Moments later, the power failed, plunging the ship into darkness before emergency lights flickered on. Diners in the restaurants were terrified as food and drinks crashed to the floor, and no one felt like eating anymore. Footage from passengers' phones showed widespread panic and confusion. Restaurant staff tried to maintain order and calmly evacuate people, but no one knew the full extent of what had happened. How severe was the collision? It flooded several compartments, including the engine room, generator rooms, and 2 power supply areas. The Costa Concordia had 7 watertight compartments designed to keep the ship afloat during emergencies by limiting water spread. Normally, if these compartments remained intact, the ship could still be saved. But the impact damaged 3 of the 7, flooding them, a devastating blow. 10 minutes after the collision, the ship's intercom crackled to life. Instead of revealing the truth, passengers were told there was merely a power outage and everything was under control. They were instructed to stay in their cabins and not to worry. Many passengers didn't buy it. How could such violent shaking be a simple blackout? Some donned life jackets and left their rooms, though most trusted the announcement and stayed put. To calm the anxious few, staff reassured them that the technical issue would soon be resolved. Meanwhile, Captain Francesco realized the gravity of the situation and contacted the company's crisis control center to report the incident. Shockingly, the center didn't alert any external authorities, clearly underestimating the crisis. The collision had crippled the ship's propulsion system, cutting its speed from 15 knots to 6.6 knots within 5 minutes, then to 2.9 knots 4 minutes later. By 10 p.m., it slowed to 1.1 knots. Relying on momentum, the ship managed a 180-degree turn toward Giglio Island shore. But after the turn, its speed dropped to 0. Strong winds then pushed the powerless vessel closer to land, increasing the chances of survival. By 10:10 p.m., the wind had driven the ship 500 meters north of Porto Village on Giglio Island. Only then did Captain Francesco see the situation spiraling out of control. He called for help from the Italian Maritime Authority and ordered the crew to abandon ship. The ship's alarm sounded, and the intercom finally instructed passengers to put on life jackets, gather at the nearest deck, and board lifeboats. By then, water had flooded the cabins, tilting the ship 25 degrees to the right, making movement difficult, especially for elderly passengers. As more water poured in, the generators failed completely, and the water pumps stopped working. The crew could only watch as the ship tilted further. Passengers crowded the decks as lifeboats were lowered from both sides. Rescue boats arrived to assist, prioritizing the elderly, women, and children. Though some disputes broke out during evacuation, order was mostly maintained. The atmosphere was tense, with occasional screams and cries for help piercing the air. As the ship's tilt worsened, every second became critical. More passengers were safely evacuated as lifeboats hit the water, but Captain Francesco, who should have been directing the effort, vanished. The crew searched for him, needing his guidance, but he was nowhere to be found. In reality, he had fled to a lifeboat early and reached Giglio Island's shore safely. His escape didn't go unnoticed. Gregorio De Falco, the Italian Coast Guard captain on duty that night, spotted Francesco ashore while overseeing the rescue. Their heated exchange was recorded. DeFalco angrily demanded Francesco return to the ship and report on the situation, how many people remained, and whether children, women, or those needing assistance were still aboard. Francesco hesitated, offering excuses, claiming another lifeboat had stopped him. DeFalco, furious, ordered him back aboard, saying, "You may have saved yourself from the sea, but I'll make you pay dearly for this." The recording later went viral, making DeFalco a hero for his blunt rebuke of Francesco's cowardice. By late 2018, DeFalco was even elected to the Italian Senate. Despite the scolding, Francesco never returned to the ship. Other crew members continued the rescue, aided by locals on Giglio Island who offered shelter to survivors. As the ship tilted further right, the situation grew dire, especially for those still aboard. A dramatic moment unfolded when water flooded Deck 4, accelerating the tilt. Lifeboats on the right side couldn't be lowered due to the angle, and there weren't enough boats left. Facing life or death, some passengers jumped into the freezing water, hoping to swim to shore. Many were injured, and some drowned. By 2:30 a.m., 300 passengers remained, awaiting evacuation. The ship continued tilting right until it hit the seabed, stopping at an 80-degree angle. The last passengers climbed down ropes to reach rescue boats. Fortunately, most were fit men who assisted until the end. Women, children, and the elderly had been prioritized, except for Francesco, who'd abandoned them. Ironically, Francesco's one correct decision was turning the ship toward shore before it lost power completely. Had it stranded mid-sea, the disaster could have been far worse. The rescue stretched through the night. By 6:17 a.m., initial efforts concluded. Most were saved, but 32 people perished, including 5 crew members who died helping others escape. Victims mostly drowned as cabins flooded or got trapped in elevators, their terror and despair unimaginable in their final moments. Costa Cruises' parent company, Carnival Corporation, paid survivors $13,000 each, about 300 million dong, covering tickets and compensation. The company blamed Francesco for sailing too close to shore and mishandling the emergency, violating safety protocols and even international standards. The ship's equipment was too damaged to repair. A photo shows a massive gash on its left side from the reef. With damages exceeding the ship's €450 million cost, Costa abandoned repairs and opted for salvage. Smit International, a Dutch maritime service with extensive salvage experience, took charge. They pumped out 2,380 tons of fuel to lighten the ship, secured its base with steel frames, and used cables and flotation boxes to upright it. In September 2013, the Costa Concordia was successfully raised. By July 27, 2014, 14 escort ships towed it to port over 4 days for dismantling. The salvage cost reached $1.5 billion, around 40 trillion dong, far exceeding the ship's original price. The disaster was later documented in Losing the Costa Concordia by National Geographic, detailing the salvage process. Francesco faced house arrest in Grosseto, Italy, charged with manslaughter. Italian media branded him a coward, some calling him Italy's most hated man. Costa Cruises terminated his contract and refused to fund his defense. 5 other crew members, crisis manager, cabin service director, deputy captain, helmsman, and 3rd officer, also fled early. They pleaded guilty and received 18 to 34 months in prison. Francesco's trial began February 23, 2013, charging him with manslaughter, causing the wreck, and abandoning passengers. He claimed the detour was for a sail-by salute, a traditional Italian gesture to honor the island by sailing close to shore. He'd done it before. Photos showed the ship passing Giglio, horn blaring to greet residents. He also told investigators the reef wasn't on his charts, insisting the water seemed deep enough, with the rocks 300 meters away. Media revealed Francesco's affair with Dominika Samorton, a Moldovan dancer. She initially denied it, but later admitted to the court she was his mistress and boarded without a ticket that night, a perk of dating crew. She refused to elaborate, citing privacy. Francesco denied the crash related to her, claiming he saved lives by steering toward shore. Asked why he fled, he absurdly claimed he slipped into a lifeboat while commanding from the deck. On February 11, 2015, after a 19-month trial, Italy's Supreme Court convicted him on all charges: 10 years for manslaughter, 5 for the wreck, and 1 for abandonment. 16 years total. He appealed in 2016 and 2017, but the original sentence held. Luxury cruises remain popular today, blending travel and leisure. Safety is paramount, and each disaster teaches future generations to prepare better. We hope such tragedies never repeat. Interestingly, the wreck happened on Friday the 13th, a day many in the West consider unlucky, a belief now influencing some Eastern cultures too. What do you think about Friday the 13th and the Costa Concordia disaster? From a criminal psychology perspective, Francesco Schettino's actions reveal a troubling mix of cowardice, negligence, and self-preservation overriding duty. His decision to abandon ship and lie about it suggests a lack of accountability, common in individuals prioritizing personal survival over responsibility. His affair and the salute detour hint at impulsivity and a need for validation, traits that likely fueled his reckless choices. This case underscores how unchecked ego and poor judgment in high-stakes roles can lead to catastrophic loss. That's all for today. See you in the next story. Goodbye.